Welcome. Again, this is the Indian Education Professional Development Grant Talking Circle, August edition. Let's go ahead and get disclaimed before we get into the content.
This presentation was produced under U.S. Department of Education contract number GS00F115CA with Synergy Enterprises, Inc. The views expressed herein do not necessarily represent the positions or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. No official endorsement by the U.S. Department of Education of any product, commodity, service, or enterprise mentioned herein is intended or should be inferred.
Okay, now that we've been disclaimed, let's take a look at today's agenda. Again, I want to welcome all of our previous grantees and the new PD grantees to your first talking circle. For today's agenda, we are going to be looking at PD program communication. So you'll get a bunch of information on that, making sure that you're contacting the right people for the right maybe questions or information. We'll also be going through the budget, looking at recruitment, and then also qualifying job placement. And joining us today is your program officer, Angela Hernandez.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you, Oleni, and thank you to the Synergy team for getting us started today. Let's go ahead and jump to the next slide. So I want to thank all of you for joining, and I know I've been able to speak with many of you by this point during my one-on-one post-award calls. So if you have not had a chance to schedule that, please do so with me as soon as possible. I know that especially for our newer grantees, people new and project directors newer to the program, we have a lot of communication that will be passing through your email box, and that has already begun, of course. So I just threw up this little chart. Again, you guys get access to these slides as well, but just a nice reference for you to just kind of know who you call or who is contacting you and why. So I, of course, serve as your program officer for your grant. So anything specific to your approved application, to include budget, any questions or issues specific to your project scope, and or the interpretation of any policies and requirements set forth by the department under this program, that's something you can be contacting me for. Our G5 grant system is the system of record for the department for all discretionary and formula grants. So that's where you and or your budget staff is going to be able to draw down funds, to view the status of your budget, to access your grant award notifications, and later this year to submit annual performance reports or final performance reports, et cetera. So that is a system that you access, and that's the contact information. Then we, of course, have the Professional Development Program Data Collection System, which is the system of record for your GEPRA measures or your Government Performance Reporting Act measures. And that system does a number of things, not the least of which is tracking data at the individual level specific to the participants that you recruit and retain and hopefully graduate and move into induction services. So all data pertinent to those individuals are maintained in that system. Thank you. I think all of you, or most of you anyway, had a chance to participate in yesterday's training. And then finally, our technical assistance. So again, you guys have already had a chance to meet everybody from our Synergy technical assistance team at prior events, but I also want to highlight, they are your go-to resource if we've shared something over the course of these various events or even one-on-one targeted opportunities. And if you have questions about accessing any of the resources, you can certainly reach out to them at oie@seiservices.com. I also put in the link here to the technical assistance webpage. And Sarah, I may ask before we wrap up today, if you don't mind bringing us to the live site, just to share out again with everybody where that is and just a real quick cursory of what's there, because there's quite a bit of information, not the least of which are recordings of this and other events that we've conducted, and information, as I've shared with some of you one-on-one already, that will be relevant to your participants, in fact. Thank you, Sarah, for putting that in the chat box. So you've got the link there, folks. Let's go to the next slide. Want to talk about qualifying job placement. So for those of you I haven't connected with yet by phone and one-on-one calls, I do want to share that much of my conversation with those I have spoken with has been around sort of what counts, right? So why is this important for us to think about now? Well, it's important for us to think about now because you're in the midst of recruiting participants to your program. And when you recruit them, it's really critical that you're giving them all of the pertinent information relevant, not just to what will happen during the training, but of course, just as important, the service payback obligation and how they get that done and how they fulfill that obligation that is tied to their training benefit. So we talked about this issue. We've talked about it for years now, but we have what we call qualifying job placement as being a job placement that is in a local educational agency or LEA or district, right? Public school district that serves a high proportion of Indian students. That's the statutory language, that meaning that's what Congress put into law under the Every Student Succeeds Act. That was the reauthorization of the ESEA, Elementary and Secondary Education Act, back in 2016. As you know, we took a few years to do rulemaking and to write the regulations to adapt to these new statutory language changes. So what it means basically, and after tribal consultation and public comment, we've come up with this definition. So you responded to this in your applications. You provided us, for example, with one or more letters of support from these qualifying entities. And so as a reminder, I want to talk a little bit in detail about what we mean about qualifying. So it's that district, including a BIE funded school. And when I say BIE funded, it could be BIE operated or it could be tribal operated, of course, that serves a high proportion of Indian students in the LEA as compared to other LEAs in the state. Here's the second part that I think is not always clear to folks. It's an LEA, including a BIE funded school, that serves a high proportion of Indian students in the school. So now we're talking about school as the level of this unit of analysis in which the participant works compared to other LEAs in the state, even if the LEA as a whole in which the participant works does not have a high proportion of Indian students compared to other LEAs in the state. That's a mouthful. Let me tell you what that means. What that means is that when you go to those lists that we provided to you during the grant competition, you will see some districts, for example, that have percentages of American Indian or Alaska Native students that does not meet or exceed this percentage of the state average that you see at the top of every state list. However, in those districts that do not meet or exceed the state average, there could very well be, by virtue of geographic location, a school within that district that does have a high concentration of American Indian and Alaska Native students, and therefore that school within the district, even if the district as a whole does not meet or exceed the average, that school might. So if we'll get to that in a second about how we can figure that out. Let's go to the next slide. So we're talking about schools, again, that standalone meet it even if the district doesn't. So I want to come back to what we mean when we say LEA. So we have LEAs, which, and I'm showing you here on the slide, the definition that is within the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. We've gotten a lot of questions about this because, again, I'll just make reference to the list that we've provided you during the 21 competition. We had LEAs listed that are listed as part of the Common Core of Data and exhaustive public LEAs districts. However, I've certainly had on occasion people asking me, well, does this count or does that count? So we draw and determine what counts or doesn't count based on this definition. So it's not a program specific definition. This is a definition applicable to all programs that fall under the ESEA and unless otherwise specified in a program statute. So the term means a public board of education or other public authority legally constituted within a state. So they perform the service function for public elementary schools or secondary in a city, county, etc. Here's why I want to focus on. I want to focus on the public because that is key. So I want to be really clear that service payback obligation, where it happens, it has to be public. Let's go to the next slide. So I talked for a second here about the list that we've discussed. We've got those lists that we keep in the technical assistance resources section of our OASC and OIE web pages. Sarah will come back to that toward the end, as I mentioned, and walk you through sort of the live site. But basically, if it's kind of tiny here in my little screenshot, but if you go down to the bottom, which is cut off, there's a line here. You see general, new grantee resources, etc. At the bottom, there's one that says service payback obligation. The list of those LEAs and state percentages will remain there. They will also at some point migrate their way onto the PDP DCS site, but know that they will always be here. I would certainly encourage you during your orientation or during your solicitation and recruitment efforts that you're sharing that information with your potential candidates up front. Let them be informed and understand where all the possible placements can be and where they cannot be. That's really, really critical so that they do not find themselves at the end of the 2 years going someplace where they thought they could go all along and turns out that they can't. So Allison, I'll come back to your question in a moment. Let's go to the next slide. So just as a reminder, what are LEAs? So LEAs are more than just those lists. Of course, let's make it complicated. They're what I said, they're the LEAs that you see on those lists, those schools that meet the regulatory definition. They're also BIE schools. So I mentioned whether Bureau operated or tribal operated, those schools also qualify just by default, right? We didn't make you have to justify population because they're BIE schools. So if you included a letter of support from a BIE school, that was automatic. You didn't need to give us the rundown of percentages because it's self-explanatory. Next slide. So it's really important to also take into account what does not qualify. I mentioned private schools, they're not public. They don't get public funds. They're not managed by public entities as defined in that LEA definition that I just shared with you. So whether parochial schools on the reservation or even non-sectarian, non-denominational, if they're private, they are private. Tribal Head Start schools do not count. They are not publicly funded in the sense that under the definition provided, meaning that there's a couple of issues for you to consider when we talk about Tribal Head Start. When we talk about a qualifying placement is not just where, it's also, as we've talked about, qualifying placement is going into a job because it requires the training, i.e. the certification or degree under which you receive the training benefit for, it requires that. So it requires that degree, it requires that type of teacher license. a really oversimplified example is somebody who decides they're going to be a PE teacher in a middle school cannot fulfill their service payback in that manner if they received a training benefit to be a high school math teacher. So if that makes sense, it should be a job for which that training they received under this benefit then qualified them for. So I want to be really clear about that. When it comes to Head Start does not require those type of licensures and degrees that they're being trained for. So I want to be really, really, really super clear. So that would include, for example, getting a bachelor's, getting a master's, etc. So those would not count. I just want to clarify that. What does count would be, I want to be a pre-K teacher at the pre-K 5 public school in X district. That could potentially qualify. Again, those kind of layered conditions of, are they on that list? Does that have a high enough concentration, high proportion of Indian students? So I just want to be really super clear up front. I know that people have asked me in the past that items may have been counted that weren't before. Here's what I will tell you. We're talking about 3 iterations ago of regulations. So regulations have changed 3 times in the last 10 years for this program. So the short answer is moving forward from the 2018 cohort on. I'm not going to go into the details about the 2018. I think many of you that had any concerns have already kind of broached those with me, and we've kind of walked through that. But I will also just share and remind you that in the program regulations, there's certainly ways to get creative about it for people. And when I say creative, meaning following the intent of the law, but maybe there's somebody that decided they're not going to be on contract, that maybe they're doing half-time at one school that doesn't qualify and half-time at another school. They can get partial credit. So I also want to kind of push and remind people there are partial credit options. It's just prorated. People can still earn service payback for that type of service. So again, what I will just tell you is, without going into too much detail, because there's so many, project specific issues, just be mindful of those. Prompt your potential candidates to ask questions. And when they come up and you can't answer them or aren't clear, feel free to share them with me, because we want to make sure that, again, that they're making informed decisions and that you're able to give them the the critical and correct information as you move forward. So I hope that's helpful to folks. And I'm happy to take questions afterward. Let's go to the next slide. Before I go into this, just to answer Allison's question. So Allison, yes, Common Core data is a data set that is based upon data collected. In fact, those lists that you see, I believe they're from 2018-19, from the 2018-19 school year. So just like every other kind of data set you run into for the department across various formula programs, for example, Title I, Title II, et cetera, these tend to be 2-year-old data. What I would say is that, will they get updated? And if they change one way or another, does that impact, the qualifications of a district or a school? I have to get clarity, and I'm going to be really frank with the program attorneys on whether we're holding these lists static, if you will. However, I will say this. Unless there's some major reorganization in any one particular district or region, those population percentages don't tend to change very significantly. I think if you come across that and you feel otherwise, I'm happy to have a conversation about that. But I would imagine that it's something that I'll make sure I get some further clarity on. But I also want to encourage you all, as your folks progress through the projects, and as they prepare for graduation and you get a much better understanding of where they're possibly going, bring those questions up to us and let us know. I want to make sure that we're giving you, again, the correct information. For now, I would say, that's your best source for knowing what qualifies and what doesn't, and I'll leave it at that. Budget revisions. So I've talked with, again, probably about 65% of you at this point in one-on-one calls. And for those of you I haven't spoken to yet, I have shared with your colleagues that I will ask for budget revisions likely in November. The reason I don't want them now is because I know many of you, most of you, are preparing to recruit and have people matriculated for this fall term, whether this be quarter or semester, depending on your institution. So I expect that there will definitely be fluctuations in budgets. It's possible you'll be right on track. It's also possible you could be behind the 8 ball in terms of expenditures due to anything from, personnel hires to you're not meeting all the targets in terms of getting the number of recruits that you had originally planned. I do recognize and just want to know that we certainly are going to talk about the flexibility over the next few months of knowing that you received this award just before the term started. So unless you had folks waiting in the wings, and some of you did, and that was wonderful, that ramp up might be a little slower for others of you. And so I'm certainly taking that into account, and I don't want you to stress about that. And I'll say it again and again, quality over quantity. It's much better to get recruits who are prepared, who are committed, and who are much more likely to succeed than it is to worry about, scrambling just to get numbers. These are people's lives. The debt that they incur as a function of this grant until they pay it off can be significant and a huge responsibility. And we want them to go into the program informed and prepared and supported in order to succeed. Next slide. So enough of my talking. I'd like to do something a little bit different today. And there seems to be enough of you here in the group, so I'm really excited. I have shared with some of our newbies that I really feel like you guys learned some of the most and some of the best things from each other, as opposed to me. And so I wanted to take a few minutes during today's event to allow some breakout conversations. When you break out, here's the deal. Here are the action items. If you have new grantees or just new project directors in your group, I'm going to ask them to give one strategy that they're using to recruit students and why they chose that strategy. And again, for returning grantees, what's a recruitment strategy or tactic you are doing differently or the same based on data, right? Based on your experience from previous cohorts, and why or why not. And then for everyone, what is one critical piece of information or data that you share with prospective recruits? Can certainly be any of the things I talked about already, but it can, I welcome new information about what you think is important to share. And again, it's just a learning opportunity, an opportunity to share, good practice. When you do meet, before you answer those questions, just a quick round of introductions of your name, your title, and your institution, and then you guys can jump right into it. When we come back, I will ask that each group have one person be prepared to report out the answer. So, I think the most assertive person can point to somebody or point to themselves, but somebody will need to report out. So with that, Tracy and Sarah and folks, I'll ask you to move us into groups.
Yeah. So if you've never done breakout groups on Zoom before, don't worry. We are going to magically throw you into rooms. And one group of you will stay here in the main room with me, because otherwise some of you don't get to move. So I'm going to click the button and you should magically head out. You'll have about 15 minutes in your group. So that means it's a good chunk of time to talk, but you'll have to keep it a little bit fast paced for everybody to get to share. And you'll get a 1-minute warning before we're going to magically transport you back to our big room.
Sarah, will they be able to see these questions?
Yes. So each room should have someone who has the questions in it. Oleni is in one room, Tracy's in one room, I'm in one room, Angela's in a room. So there should be at least one person in every room that does have access to those questions.
Great. All right.
Right,
Thank
here we go. So as we get going today, we can kick off with some introductions. I can just call you out as I see you on my screen just to make it a little bit easier to know who's next. And if you want to let us know who you are, your role and your institution. So we will start with Jennifer.
Hello, thank you. We are from St. Cloud State, Minnesota. So St. Cloud State, Minnesota, St. Cloud State University in Minnesota. And I'm the Dean of the College of Education and Learning Design here.
Wonderful. And Lori.
Good afternoon. I'm Lori Floyd. I am the Dean in our School of Education at UNC Pembroke in Pembroke, North Carolina. We're in Southeast North Carolina.
Great. And Nicole.
Hello, I'm Nicole Thompson. I'm the Vice Dean for the Division of Teacher Preparation at Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College at Arizona State University.
Welcome. And Darlene.
Yeah, hamitaku yapi, eki yapi we de me washichu Darlene Sinclair emaki yapi. I am Darlene Sinclair. I'm an associate professor. I teach Native Studies and Ethnic Studies, and I direct an academic center called the Multicultural Resource Center. But I'm going to be working with the St. Cloud State University project with Jennifer, and as teaching a seminar, but also being sort of a faculty mentor to our cohort.
That's great. And Richard. Looks like Richard might have stepped away, so we'll switch over to Kate.
Hi, I'm Kate Mullen. I'm the director of the Office of Sponsored Programs at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And my team is the one that administratively handles these grants.
Great. And Jody.
Hey, I'm Jody Kluzna from St. Cloud State University, and I work with Dean Miller and Darlene Sinclair on our program, as well as Barb Miller, and I am in the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs. So I too am supporting them administratively.
Great. Yeah, and just magically y'all ended up in the same group. Well, as we kind of dive into our conversation, we're going to start with either, because I know we have a couple of you who are new grantees this year, so welcome. What are some strategies that you're using to recruit students into your program? And then for those of you who are continuing grantees, which are a couple of you as well, what strategy might you be doing a little bit different? I've already heard from some continuing grantees, some of the things that they've taken lessons learned, and they're doing things a little bit different with recruitment this time. So I will let you kind of self-select as you feel comfortable sharing your strategies, and you're welcome to just unmute and share out.
My name is Lori. Again, I am a new grantee, new to the family here. We have scheduled a series of interest meetings. We plan to enroll our first cohort in January. And I've also scheduled one-on-one meetings with superintendents who can really help us with the pipeline to those who are in high school and currently interested in pursuing teaching as a profession. I selected the superintendents with the highest number of Native American students enrolled in that district. And we have 3 right here, and we sit in the largest one.
Great. Yeah, and it's always good to start getting those pipelines early. That'll be really helpful for you. What else are folks trying or tweaking this year?
So we're a new grantee at ASU, and we've already had partnerships established across the state. But with this program in particular, we had two of the 22 tribal communities initially identified. And so we've done some webinars so far. And I think we had 5 students trying to start classes yesterday.
Oh,
We met last Friday and said, look, we got the money, and can you start on the 19th, or do you want to start in October? And they were pushing because they were really excited. So I'm still waiting for an account from enrollment to know how that went. But really it was just building on the partnerships we had already established so far. So I'm open for a lot of strategies to see how we continue to advance. There are several Native or tribal networks and entities already on campus that we've been working with as well. So just mobilizing as quickly, as we can. It was like, yay, we got the money, and oh my gosh, class starts in 2 weeks. Is this even possible? So
yeah, it was definitely a rapid turnaround. But how wonderful that your folks are so excited.
Nicole, I envy that problem. That's awesome. So at St. Cloud State University, we intentionally partnered with my tribe at Lower Sioux, a Dakota community in Minnesota. So I have connections, and we have intentional connections with folks working for the nation. And so I think that's going to be sort of our starting point. But I also do a lot of work with teachers around the state and Indian Ed kind of programs. So I think some of the networks, the more formal and informal networks that I already have access to, I think we're hoping to recruit students from as well. But we're new. We're first year, so we're looking for tips.
Yes, brand new. And we're hoping to start our first, well, we said we were going to start our first cohort in the spring semester. So yeah, we will be here to listen, but we're really excited to do the work. So
yeah, no, and this is definitely a good group to come together and get ideas from. We have a nice range of experience levels from all over the US. Any other recruitment strategies that you're trying or trying differently this year? All right. Any big recruitment questions you have? We might not have them in our group, but I can take them down and we can always kind of put those on the burner for others to discuss as well. Any burning recruitment questions? All right. I know, and it's still early for many of you, so don't worry. Let's move to our other discussion question about critical pieces of information or data that you're sharing with your prospective recruits or that you plan to share with them. What are those really important bits of information that you think they need to understand?
I want to make sure that we're very clear about the sort of restrictions, but also the payback. I don't want to see any of our students get into the position of having to pay back money. So right. I am interested in other institutions. How do they structure it? I don't want to like scare people out of not applying, but I also don't want to see students get into financial hardship because of this program. And there's so many legitimate reasons that students can get derailed from school. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to balance them really going in to this project with knowing all of what is going to be required of them, but also be encouraging, because sometimes listing a lot of requirements could frighten people off. So
absolutely. Yeah, and it looks like Leslie's echoing your sentiments in the chat box. It's definitely really important that they understand those payback service requirements and what they're getting themselves into, because you're right. You don't want them to be overwhelmed and not do it because they think, oh, there's too many rules and restrictions. But it is something that a student who doesn't pay attention to those things and just signs on could get themselves in over their head. And it's real debt that they could be incurring. We want to make sure they understand that. And Leslie's saying previously, They had a more relaxed admission standards, and they're working to increase expectations and be clear. And that's something we've definitely talked about in some of the previous talking circles, is that some of the continuing grantees, one of the things that I know some of them were tweaking were their admission requirements, that they were putting some things in place to truly make sure that they were getting students who were ready for the program and for the commitment of being in this, so that they didn't accidentally get in over their head. And, maybe it wasn't the best program for them this semester, but it would be in the future. So really looking at those admission standards too. Any other important things you want to make sure your prospective recruits know?
I had a question if other people have experienced this. So a lot of folks in Minnesota are really interested in language revitalization. And while our program at St. Cloud State is not going to focus on language, we're not teaching Dakota and Ojibwe, those would be the two major languages here. I imagine, though, that we will be getting people into the program because we have a number of language immersion programs. I saw Lisa Larange was in the meeting, and she teaches at a language immersion program in Wisconsin. And so I am curious if maybe there's even a cohort of people in this group that might be having that language, that early childhood or K-3 language immersion folks might even have a special interest group or something like that.
Yeah, and that's a great idea, because we definitely do have, particularly with this new group of grantees, folks who are focused on that language learning certification and working in language programs, because it was finally an allowable avenue within the grant program. So that's something we can definitely look at and probably get back to with more information at our September talking circle. But I think that's a great idea. The other resource we in particular have, and Lisa's actually part of that group as well, is that we have a whole nother OIE grant program that focuses exclusively on language learning programs. And any of the PD grantees who are working with language teachers are always welcome to join in their talking circles as well, if you want to make connections with those programs and talk with them as well. So none of the talking circles are top secret. You're always welcome to hop into the others too. But yeah, great idea. Any other bits we want to make sure they understand? And I'll say, you're not quite there yet, but I think something that maybe gets skipped over sometimes in the recruitment process that our folks maybe don't understand, but can be really helpful, particularly if they're feeling a bit overwhelmed, is really reminding them all the supports that you're going to have for them, that you offer the 2 years of induction services. So once they've completed their formal training and they're shot out into the real world, into a classroom with real kids and real parents and real stressors, that they're not alone. You're going to be there supporting them for 2 years, which is really something I think special about this program that a lot of new teachers just don't have access to. Any other shares or even questions? All right.
I had a quick question. So the funding could be over a period of 3 years. And so if somebody were to be at a place where they actually typically could graduate, they could finish in 2 years, but they had a life event, because that's the thing, life happens to our students. And and if they had to stop out for a semester and then come back in the third year to finish up or something, are there any downsides to that? Does it mean that they would have a whole additional year of potential payback? Is it by semester?
Yeah, so it's by month. So that's a really good question, because that is something that can accidentally increase someone's service payback. Yeah, if they have put their education on hold for a semester because they've had something happen, it happens, they're not paying back for that time they're not in class. That's actually time that they're actually engaged in education in their training program. That is what they have to pay back. So yeah, really good question, because it will happen for all of you. It's not something odd or anything like that, particularly because we're working often with non-traditional students who have lots of other things going on. So yeah, rest assured that will happen, and it is okay.
Welcome. My name is Tracy. I'm one of the technical assistance team members. Nice to have this intimate group here today. Thanks for joining in. Why don't we go ahead and maybe we can just go around and take a turn. We have about 15 minutes. You can introduce yourself, let us know where you're located and the name of your granting agency or the title of your program. And then maybe we could just go ahead and even dive into the content. Like after you introduce yourself, let us know if you're new or returning, and then, answer those questions accordingly. And if you have a thought right now about that critical piece of data or information that you feel is important to share with your prospective recruits, go ahead and share those when your turn comes up too. So how does that sound?
Good.
Excellent. Do I have any volunteers to be a reporter when we get to the main group? Does anybody want to raise their hand and take that on?
No.
I will. I'm a talker.
All right, Stacy,
Robert, I'll defer if you want to.
Oh, I thought I heard Robert say no.
A definite no.
Okay.
Oh.
So it's all you, Stacy. All right. All right, very good. Well, how about I'll just pass it off to somebody, and then when you're done sharing, we can pass it off to the next person. Just pick anybody from the screen there. So I haven't seen Lisa in a few weeks, so I'm gonna pass it for the baton first over to Lisa Laurent.
Hi, how are you? I'm Lisa Larange, and we are 2018 grantee to train. Do you want us to get? I'm so sorry, I was multitasking.
No, that's okay. That's okay. You can just let us know where you're located, the name of your grant program or organization, and then since you're a returning grantee, you can think about sharing what is a strategy that you're maybe doing differently or maybe the same, something that's worked really well based on your experience with your past grant.
Okay. I'm the Director of Special Projects at the Warukudaring Ojibwe Immersion School. We're part of a BIE school at Lakudare. And like I said, we're a 2018 grantee, so we're finishing up our third year of training teachers, both enrolled at Northland College, our collaborating partner, and the LCO Community College. As far as recruitment, I was not the original project director to recruit. I do remember seeing a huge turnout for a pretty big event where the former project director gave a big presentation to many of the teacher aides and assistants of the LCO schools and the Warukudaring school, where we typically, have seen not a lot of Native teachers and the teacher aides in the community stay teacher aides for many, many years, and so we really reached out to them to make sure that they knew of this support through this. We're calling our program the Nundagikanjiganash, which is an Ojibwe word for kind of like STEM science learning, because we want to train teachers in those fields, because we have a lot of a need for not only train Native teachers, but also to learn more about the environment and the local environmental issues of northern Wisconsin. So yeah, so we wanted to get all those teacher aides interested because it'd be great to see them step up and become the certified lead teachers at both schools. Is that it? Is there more questions?
That's good. If you have, is there any critical piece of information or data that you've learned or feel is really important to share with your recruits?
I guess big picture, like in our community, we kind of stress the importance of, why it's important to have Native teachers for Native students. So we kind of show like the public school in town doesn't have a really high graduation rate for our Native students. And then we compare that, locally with how, just students are really connect with seeing people from the community as teachers. That's just a really big deal. I think that it's really important for our Native youth to see to see people like them as their teachers. So that's something we share.
Thanks, Lisa. Now you get to choose who goes next.
Oh, okay. I'll pick Robert.
Well, thank you very much. I'm Rob Monette. I'm actually the grant specialist at the Turtle Mountain Community College. So I helped to put this proposal together, but we don't have a director in place right now. So I'm kind of filling in that spot until we do. We have all the players in place, but not the director yet. But our program is called TEACH, which is Training Educators to Advance Culture and Heritage. And we work with our local schools here. We've got a BIA school, a BIE school. We have several different schools in the communities in on the reservation and off, and all of them have a high percentage of Native American students. So it's really going to be a widespread program that's going to help in a lot of areas. We have a strong placement history with the program where we worked under another college previously, and this time we were working on our own. But we have a high percentage of our students that are placed locally, and all of the schools were very excited that we were participating again with this program because they really like the quality of our teachers that come out of the program. So that's I'm not sure, like I said, I'm the grants person, but I don't know how we do the recruiting and all that. So it's like I'm not going to be much help in that area.
We still appreciate your sharing. Do you have any thoughts about the other question about critical information or data to share?
No, I don't. I don't have any insight in that. I've actually only been here for about a year or two, so it's kind of I'm still learning the college. In fact, I didn't know. There's a lot of things I don't know about the college yet.
Gotcha. Well, thanks for diving in.
You're welcome.
And now you get to choose. Yeah.
I will pass on to Bonnie because Bonnie is showing on the top of my screen.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I'm much help either. I'm new. No. So Bonnie Rosette from Stone Child College in Montana. I'm the head of the education department and just started in May. So we were part of the 2018 as well. So we're just continuing the teacher education program for elementary education endorsements. We offer a 4-year bachelor's program here on campus, and we work with the 2 local institutions, which are tribal schools as well. So just kind of creating more locally grown Indigenous educators in the districts. So I know that the recruitment, they kind of already had students here in the institution that were interested in education, and that's kind of where they developed the IEPD for the 2018. One of the strategies that we have for the upcoming grantee is just what they didn't do was go and kind of talk to the local institutions. We have paraeducators like Lisa's, where they've been in the district, but and have 2-year degrees in mathematics or sciences of some sort, but they've never pursued their elementary ed endorsement. So we're hoping to just kind of recruit some of those paraeducators to become a part of this cohort and complete their degrees for elementary education. Stacy.
Hi, thanks, Bonnie. I am kind of new and kind of not. So we are a 2018 also, but I just started working with that project more as the individuals got to the induction phase. I'm with Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma with our career development program. We have called our grant Teach to Reach, and we partner with 6 universities. The 2018 version, we had 5 schools. For this one, we have 6 universities. So we focus on reaching out to each individual partner university to find out who their teacher education students are that are Native Americans, and we recruit them that way. Pre-COVID days, we of course did more in-person visits to these campuses. We would set up tables and catch their students coming through, or we would give notice to the education departments that we were coming on certain days. For this go around, we're probably going to do most everything virtually. So one thing that has worked really well for us is just to reach out to those education deans of those particular colleges and just ask for a list of students, and then we email or contact them to see if they might be interested in joining the grant. And the critical piece probably that I share is how important it is to update their information in that PDCS system. You know, oftentimes we start with them, we have them go in and just verify their data to start, and then they forget to keep checking in with that once they're employed every 6 months. So I just share how critical that is to keep that Office of Indian Education updated on their status so that they don't get into some kind of cash payback rather than the service payback. So let's see. I'm not sure who else is there. I see an empty spot and I see someone with no video. So I'm going to go with Patricia. There she is.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name's Patricia Najera. Can you see me and hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So just so you know, I'm not driving. I'm pulled over. We are a 2017 and a 2018 grantee, and I have been the manager of our program for that time. We are located at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and right now we have about 20 students in our program. I think one of the most successful things that we've done to really promote students to think about becoming educators and, you know, showing them data as far as the lack of Indigenous educators in the state of Wisconsin. It was great to, you know, to hear Lisa. I know she's further up north in Wisconsin. We're in downtown or in the central city, Milwaukee. But we share information as far as really the lack of Native American teachers in the largest urban school district in Wisconsin, which would be Milwaukee Public Schools. We do have a website where we do feature each student, where they write up their own bio and they talk about why they want to become a teacher. And we have heard during our recruitment phase that that is a big reason, a draw for the program. And what else can I tell you? Any other questions?
You got about a 30-second warning. I think that's a really cool tip though, Patricia. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, we try to have a monthly seminar with all the students, and we invite people from around the state to give us an overview of the work they do. So they might not be in the classroom, but they might be doing professional development. So it's turned out great.
Perfect.
Hi, everybody. I'm Oleni. Can you folks all see the questions that we need to go through? Okay, do we want to, yeah, I know always at the end, we're sort of rushing to figure out who's going to share out. So do we want to just sort of pick somebody at the top of the talking circle? Okay, well, maybe we'll do it at the end then. All right, so I guess let's do some fast introductions. And we can just, let's see, go around. Renuka, you want to start us off?
Sure. Lessen the pain that way.
Yeah.
So I'm Renuka De Silva. I am an assistant professor at College of Education at UND, and also the program director. Everything to do with this program, I'm Jackie of all trades here. So that's my deal. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Someone else want to introduce themselves?
Sure. I'm Shannon Amiot. I'm the Dean of Education at Oglala Lakota College and the project director for our new project. Nice to meet you all.
Hi, Shannon. Next.
I can jump in. I'm Margaret Newton, and I'm in Milwaukee. I'm at the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and I'm currently Dean of Humanities, but I'm also director at the Lecta Quinney Institute and the project director for this grant for us.
Hi. Okay, I see more people on.
I'll go next. Hello, my name is Richakbi Yelhawk. I work for OLC as the Secretary of Education. So Shannon's my boss.
Cool. Okay, let's see, who else do we have here?
I can go. Heather Villarreal, I'm the Assistant Division Director of Teacher Prep at Arizona State University. And I am just serving in place right now until we get people hired to serve, to oversee this program. But our Vice Dean is also on, and our Director of Research is also here as well.
Awesome. Thanks for serving in place.
Thank you.
Okay, someone else want to introduce themselves?
I'll introduce myself. I'm Steve Godla. I'm a retired assistant superintendent for a school district, and now I'm a consultant with Blue Lake Rancheria and Tallawatini Nation.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Did we get everybody? I'm trying to scroll through. Angela?
Yeah, hi. I'm Angela Como Jacobson, and I serve as the project coordinator for iKeep, which is the program at University of Idaho.
Cool. Nice to meet you. Okay, I think we got everybody. I just want to make sure. Okay, well, I think that's everyone. Okay, so let's get to our questions. So if you are a new grantee, if you wouldn't mind sharing one strategy that you're going to use to recruit students to your program and why you're using that strategy. Do we have any new grantees on? Let's see.
Arizona State should be new. I know there was a kickoff, and I know that there was a partnership meeting between the university and communities, and our recruitment team, as well as our vice dean, and everyone went in and worked directly within the communities and explained what our initiatives were. And I think within a day or two, we probably had 20 something that were interested in the program.
Awesome.
Blue Lake Rancheria, when we were getting letters of support for the grant, we sent out mailings to all the tribes and school districts in the 6 counties that we're working with. So they already had a lot of information, and we had kind of pre-sign up. So even though the notice was late, we were able to get our first cohort full within 4 days. So.
Wow. That's great. Great pre-work. Anyone else want to share? Okay, if not, then we'll go to the returning grantees. So what is a recruitment strategy or tactic you are doing differently, or maybe also the same, based on your experience from previous cohorts? If you wouldn't mind sharing that.
I can go.
Okay.
So for the previous grant, I wasn't there when the recruitment happened. I kind of jumped in midway.
Mm-hmm.
But what I have decided this time around, because I was involved from the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
is to actually speak to each participant separately.
Mm-hmm.
Really, even the selling of the program, because then you are not recruiting for numbers, you're actually recruiting based on the interest.
Mm.
It's exhaustive in some ways, but it's well worth it. For example, I have got students now who are committed to the program, who understand the depths and the gravity of commitment. I don't have huge numbers, but I just thought, let me start with people who are really, really committed, and it wasn't about the stipend.
Yeah.
I just felt last time the stipend was sold rather than the program.
Mm.
So I have held back the stipend in the sense, this is what we're doing, but with this comes huge responsibility.
Yeah.
Kuliana, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's how I approach it, and it seems to be working.
Yeah. Awesome. I think that's really, I mean, Angela talked about that at the end about really going for quality, right? And versus quantity, and making sure, hopefully that helps to make sure everybody gets through the program and actually goes into the schools that are meant to get. So awesome. I can't wait to see how that turns out with your cohort. Anyone else please want to share? Current grantees or returning grantees?
Sure, I can jump in here. I'm just going to build on the comments of the last 2 individuals. I mean, certainly one, we utilize our partner schools as a source of getting the information out and available, because they certainly have paraprofessionals that they're working to grow their own into a teaching position.
Mm-hmm.
The other is typically our instructors have made announcements in their classes. So we have our instructors that are at our sophomore, junior level education courses. Then we know they're getting the message to the individuals that would have met that minimum number of credits required to come in. But the other thing in our institution is we do need to make sure that it is the information is available to everyone. So it will go out also in our school newsletter, the school Facebook page, and then in an email. Something I guess that'll be different is I actually do have access now to all of the declared education majors in the college.
Wow.
So I'm able to send them messages so that I can clarify what it is, some of the basic requirements, invite them to kind of an orientation session that would share information about the project.
Mm-hmm.
But then I too agree with those individual meetings that are held with students, because once somebody expresses that they have an interest and they believe that they meet the criteria to be a participant, it is part of our responsibility in advising them to help walk them through what the expectations are. Is it a commitment that they're prepared to make? And we now purposely leave out information regarding a stipend and support. That is something that gets brought up later once we know folks are making the commitment.
Yeah. Awesome. So really what I hear you folks saying is that it's sort of a multi-tiered approach, right? Where there's a big sort of like, get the news out there, see who's interested. And then once you find people who are interested and qualify, sort of digging into, you know, this is what the program means. Can you actually accomplish this? Are you still interested? And then the stipend comes later as a benefit. So great. So it's a multi-tiered approach. Anyone else doing something like that, or maybe something different?
I can share. So at University of Idaho, something we've always leveraged is we have an MOU with 10 regional tribes, you know, so of course those are the first places we send our information to when we get a grant. And something we're doing this year kind of to build on that is we've selected 2 of those tribes who have really good like infrastructure for their education programs in their schools, and we are partnering with them in a consortium. And so those 2 tribes are actually going to help us lead recruitment efforts in their communities. So we're still getting that underway, but we're really excited for that this time around.
That's awesome. Really awesome. Utilizing partnerships and connections to get to recruit. Awesome. Anyone else doing something similar, different that they want to share? No? Okay, well, let's move on to the next question. So the third one is for everyone. What is one critical piece of information or data that you share with prospective recruits?
For me, oh, sorry. I'm sorry, Shannon, do you want to go?
You go ahead.
Okay. What I have shared is our 100% employment placement. That was good. 100% meaning of the ones who were prepared to go forward, there were a couple who wanted to further their education, but they were successful. They, you know, they graduated and all of that, but the others got placed right away, even as they were graduating, because that had to do with where they were placed. And so I totally agree with Angela. When they're placed in, I mean, from their area, but highly populated American Indian students, I mean, they were grabbed because they saw how these teachers were teaching.
Yeah.
And they wanted them. So before they graduated, they were all offered contracts.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Shannon, you were going to share something?
Was just one of the things we really make sure that we share up front is the work payback component, and making sure that potential participants are well aware of the commitment then that comes along with joining the project and benefiting from it.
Okay. Awesome. That is important information. Well, it looks like we're soon going to be summoned back and put back into the main group. Anyone interested in sort of reporting back? Nobody. Well, I mean, okay, so if nobody wants to, I took notes. So if you want, I can report back if that's okay. That sounds like a plan. Okay. We got our plan ready to go. Thank you guys for sharing and a great conversation. Take care.
Looks like folks are floating back.
Floating.
Give Got almost everybody back out of their rooms. Last couple were hanging on till the last minute. You wanted just a little bit more conversation. All right, so we will start our share. We can start with group 1, and you may not know what number group you were in. So this was the group that had Angela in it.
Allison, taking one for the team. Go ahead, Allison.
So we had a lot of good sharing going on in our group. Carmelita, one of the things I took away from what she gave us as a recruitment strategy, she had a really good public relations strategy with using the radio and television. And she also used their alumni program, which is what we did as well. Kelly shared that she, besides doing flyers and brochures and their website, word of mouth was really a big key component of recruitment for her program, and that she's using a waiting list to keep people on the list for future grants if she already fills her current cohort. So she's doing that, and I came away, that was a really great idea from her. Maria and Leilani, I was going back and forth writing down as much as I could, but the concept of using your listserv for recruiting was really great, and the development of a virtual platform and continuation of personal relationships was also a very big key point there. And then Jen brought out that she's what I thought was really awesome is she's actually following her students and engaging with them on social media to keep them engaged in the program. And that was something I had never thought of doing. And so I thought that was a really, really interesting. So those are my key takeaways from our group, group 1.
Thanks, Allison. What about group 2? This group had Oleni in it.
Yeah, so I'll be reporting. For our new grantees, we had 2 grantees that had done a lot of pre-work. And connections and partnerships. So their cohorts are filling up or are full. So that was really good to hear. With our returning grantees, they really talked about a tiered sort of approach to recruitment. One where it's sort of broad, getting the word out about the program. And then 2, once you find people who are interested and make the qualifications, really having one-on-one discussions around what the expectations are they able to fill, and really sort of holding back on the stipend until they knew that people were committed and were holding on. So they didn't sort of throw stipend out front. They held back on it to make sure people were committed to meeting all the expectations of the program. So really a tiered approach. The other thing, as far as the critical piece of information, one of our participants said that they really talked to recruits about that they were able to get 100% of employment of the people who had gone through their program, even prior to graduation. So really highlighting the success and the need for their people coming out of their training program. And then also talking about the work payback and that's an option for being able to pay back the program. So that's what we learned and shared.
Thanks, Oleni. Group 3 was the group that had Tracy in it. And it looks like she said Stacy is their reporter.
Oh, I think Stacy might be on mute.
I think Stacy may have run away.
How's that?
There you are. Thank you, Stacy.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I was writing furiously trying to get all the great ideas down. I don't think we got to everyone in our group, but Lisa mentioned she's a returning grantee. And they try to really focus on the teacher aide positions at their schools. They have 2 that they work with, and they give large presentations to those, trying to encourage those teacher aides to become full-time classroom teachers. So I thought that was a great idea and a good resource. And their critical piece of data, and I really love this, was that they try to stress the big picture about why Native American teachers are needed for Native American students. And that really struck home with me. I like that one. Robert's new. The acting director had nothing whatsoever to share with his group. not calling him out. He also didn't want to be the recorder. So whatever, Robert. I'm just picking on him. Bonnie also had some good ideas. They also kind of focus on the paraprofessionals and people that are maybe just have a 2-year degree or don't have the elementary education endorsement. So they focus on them. Patricia, we got to right at the very end. So I hope I got it all right. She uses a website that has, I believe she said, some previous success stories and people that are sharing information on there. And it's been a really good tool. And that they show data to recruit people, showing just the huge lack of Native American teachers in their largest school district there in Wisconsin. And then I pretty much shared what Kelly did. She and I worked together on our Teach to Reach grant. She's our project director. We'll probably focus more recruitment wise this time on through email, through our partner universities, through their education deans. They are great to send us a list of Native American teacher education students, and we start with that list and the waiting list that she mentioned. And then we're hoping to next semester, if COVID will disappear, to be able to get back to those campuses and really do some heavy recruiting in person. So that was, and I don't think we got to one member of our group. We didn't get to D, so we ran out of time.
Well, and then my group was group 4, and through all my own fault, we forgot to nominate anyone to share. So I will take that hit. So we had a great discussion. We primarily had new grantees in our group. So we had a lot of folks who were new to the PD program family. They're really looking forward to getting to know all of you in this talking circle world, to network and get ideas and share these strategies. They're already making some great strides though in their recruitment. So lots of focus on communication, relationship building, reaching out to the school districts already, reaching out to tribes, reaching out to Native organizations in their area, and really getting the word out and building those connections now, which I think are really going to help them with recruitment. Most of them are starting in January with their first cohorts because of the quick turnaround. But I will give a little shout out to Nicole in Arizona, who already has 5 students who are so excited they want to start next week. They're willing to take that big leap and jump in. So they're going to be leaping into schooling.
We hope we can get them in. We're trying very, very
Ideally,
hard.
They're willing if it will work. Yes. And then, you know, as they're thinking about what they want to share with their recruits, there's definitely a big focus on sharing about service payback requirements and making sure that students really grasp what the program is and what their responsibilities are so that they don't get themselves into a situation where they're having to do service payback and where they're having to pay back money. So really being clear with that. We talked some about admission standards and really making sure that we're getting students who are prepared for this program. And maybe it's not for them this semester, but with a little additional preparation, they could be ready to enter the program in the next semester. So getting those best prepared students. And then also great idea to look at some cohorts within our own grantees for those of you who are addressing early childhood educators, and then particularly with our new cohort, those who are going to be addressing language teachers. So we'll pull together some of that information to be able to share with you in September, because I think those would be great kind of little special interest groups within our grantees that could share together. So thank you all for sharing in your groups. This is exactly the wonderful kind of sharing we like to see in the talking circle, and that I think is so helpful. So I'm going to throw it back to Tracy so that we can start wrapping up for this Friday.
Actually, before we do that, sorry, just a couple of points I want to share, folks. And I want to underscore from your conversations and from the feedback today, which was excellent. One is that you should count on more of these opportunities to be able to share amongst yourselves and be prepared to share the kinds of challenges and opportunities that you're encountering as you implement the work. there's one thing we haven't really spent a whole lot of time talking about, which I think was a fundamental part of each of your respective applications, and that is the consortium agreements that many of you had, meaning the partners. All of you right now just talked very implicitly about the critical partnerships that help make even that word of mouth, whether it's formal, formal media outlets or, folks down the street, that you're communicating and sharing this information with, and how pivotal they are to that work. As we move forward in the work, it's really important that you spend just as much time thinking about what role, what responsibilities, what supports can these people bring to the areas of retention, completion, and induction. And I'd go so far as to say, yes, we're going to talk a little bit about those formal partnerships and what you should be able to, frankly, command as the leader of that consortium with your partners. I want to delve into that a little bit more this year and really help you understand sort of what really you can set as expectations for your partners and how they should meet you halfway on that things. And they're legally bound, right, in this via this consortium agreement. So what they should be doing for you and with you. The other piece that I'm just going to give you a heads up, and I've heard people kind of allude, I've had questions before about, are we going to have more data? You can anticipate over the next many months. Now we have enough of a concentration of data in what we call the professional development program data collection system that really starts to draw out, patterns, right? And, trends in terms of what's happening, what we're seeing. One of the trends that we had pulled out and shared with you briefly last year was we were really surprised at the significant number of people that ended up teaching or serving as administrators in a state other than where they were licensed. So I really want to call that to your attention, because I want you to also be thinking when we think about induction, because induction is a big part of this grant now, right? 2 years. The expectation is that it's robust. Be thinking now, look around virtually at your colleagues, at people you've just met. What are ways that you might actually be thinking about enlisting, them as partners in the induction services? I say that because most of you in your applications were pretty broad as far as the strategies, meaning it's a good thing in that it gives you a lot of flexibility, but what might be ways that you're thinking about tapping the support, coalescing support for induction delivery, especially when you're trying to do that service, provide those services to people that are far away from you. Because I know and I say that speaking to challenges that many of your colleagues here and maybe you in the 2018 cohort, for example, really had a hard time with this last year with some of the induction services because people were remote, number one, but even where they just weren't close by, it's back to that. Those relationships really mean a lot in a lot of aspects of the work that you do. So just kind of throwing some of those things out there more to give you the time to do the long-term planning. And the last thing I'll say is all of that hard work of that one-on-one with your prospective recruits, that's the level of intensity I saw that you guys demonstrated. I say you guys, meaning veteran grantees. That was a lesson I saw that you learned by virtue of the personnel resources that I saw you ask for. Now, you know how much time and effort it takes to keep your people there and to support them and help them succeed. So, I think it's pretty clear that you understand, and at least anecdotally are telling us that that, a once a semester touch base with somebody is not going to keep them there. There's going to be a lot more work and supports on the ground and day to day that have to happen to make your program successful. That's becoming very clear. So where you don't have that, and maybe where you don't have the resources in your grant, I just point out that's where a partner needs to fill that void. So think about those things as you move forward. And I'm going to turn it back over to Tracy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that, Angela. So I'm going to take us now through the end of our session today. If you have any questions that you have for us, I'm going to give you a minute to think about that while we go ahead and put up on the screen our end of our session feedback poll. We do take a critical look at this information, so please do fill that poll out for us. You'll see we also included a question today about your preferred platform for like video chatting or communicating. That'll also really help us going forward in making sure that we are best prepared for one-on-one sessions or other meetings that we have with you. So go ahead and that's still going to stay up on your screen. I see we've got a few people filling that out. I also want to bring your attention to the OMB survey that has been sent out. The invitation to complete the survey came directly from our director at the Office of Indian Education that went out earlier this month. This is really an opportunity for you to give us some feedback about what's working, what you'd like to see differently, and to give us input about how what you'd like to see with these kinds of technical assistance opportunities. So I see the link going up there into the chat. So if you didn't get that email and haven't completed it yet, you can grab that right now as well. So thank you for your feedback on that. Just a quick note about a program planner that came up yesterday in our PDCS session. That this is an optional tool that the TA team makes available if you'd like to use it. It's set up really nicely to mimic the kinds of things you have to put into the G5 for your reporting. So that's why a lot of people have given us such good feedback on it. Those will get sent to the program director through Google. If you want somebody else added to that, you can let us know. Let us know that you're TA team members so that you can add others to that, and you can all collaborate on it asynchronously, depending on no matter where you're at. There's a link up there too on the screen, and that just went into the chat box that gives an overview of the program planner and how that works. So you can welcome to check that out at your leisure. And then if you you can always reach out to your technical assistance team for additional coaching if you want some extra guidance on that. Here are some upcoming events to put on your calendar if you don't have them already. We keep office hours every month. These are just drop-in times that you can come, drop in and ask a question and leave once you get the answer. It's an opportunity to connect with your program officer as well as your technical assistance team with really no agenda. You just come with your questions. Two content related events that are coming up. This first one is open to everybody, focused on trauma and resilience. It's a 2-part series that'll last for 2 hours each. That's coming up September 14th and 16th from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern time. And then the mental health first aid. Now this one is a little bit different in that attendees are eligible for an actual certification. So there's a little bit more strict guidelines that we have to follow. As of an hour ago, there were only 8 seats left for that session, for the one of 2 sessions. So please let us know, reach out to us at your TA team to let us know if you're interested in that. This does come with some requirements, right? There's a little bit of pre-work that has to be completed, and they are really, the expectation is that the participants will be actively engaged for that entire time of the training. That first one is scheduled for September 21st, and it is fairly longer than some of the other ones, from 12 to 6 p.m. Eastern time. No worries, there's some breaks built in. I know that's a long time to be online, but like I said, you can actually come away with the certification then for the mental health first aid. And then finally, keep an eye out for some notices about that PDCS user training. We'll let you know about that. Now, I know we're a minute over time. and some of you are probably jumping off and have to go, but I did want to honor the request earlier here today from Angela that we highlight on the resources for you on the OIE website. So I'll make sure to do that now if you're able to stay on. But this is the main landing page here, and if you scroll down to the bottom, you see you can actually click to the resources for any one of the grant areas here. So when you click on on Indian Education Professional Development, that takes you to the main page where you can find lots of links and resources that are helpful for you with your grant. And then over here on the right, there's a link labeled Technical Assistance Resources, and that's where you're going to find under service payback obligation that list of districts, LEAs that have a high percentage of American Indian Alaska Native students. So that's where you can find that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I don't know if anybody wanted to say more about those websites or highlight anything there.
I think we're good for now. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and I'll just leave you with our regular slide with our contact information there so in case you want to get a hold of Angela, your program officer, or any of us here at the technical assistance team.
Thank you, everybody, for sticking it out. Appreciate it, and good luck to you. Have a great weekend.